And we are live.
Church.
Yeah.
Not done.
Oh, there are copies of the budget for citizens to say.
Yeah, I'll have to make some.
Make some for you.
The calendar, where's it in mine, for some reason. I need to Get a calendar on your phone, for whatever reason. Yes, thank you.
I got to two. Something saying. Not really.
Okay.
First have a big one. First. Two.
Yeah.
That was the dimension. It's allowed. Yeah, it's really good. It's big size.
Agenda and everything. I don't know how to look. Unless they changed it from what I looked.
First,
Evening, Chief.
It usually is.
sanitation.
Oh, yeah.
You see, there's the, oh, that's, you're right. Hang on. Let me look.
I can share it. Thanks. With the share.
Thank you, sir.
That's it. All right. Okay. Live here at active or but
It's all available online. I don't have it at hand.
This meeting will come to order. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Prospect City Council. And the first item on the agenda is consider the approval of the minutes of the last three meetings, which were March 14th, March 21st, and March 25th, 2022. Drafts of those minutes have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections?
As amended, right, John?
Yeah, the second email. Just adding Sarah.
I move the approval of the minutes of the 3 meetings.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear somebody?
Yeah, Sarah.
Okay, the ayes are unanimous and those minutes are approved. Next item is the mayor's update on city matters. We are going to consider the proposed budget for fiscal year 2022-23 at tonight's meeting for a first reading. I want to say that the revenue portion of that is largely from the property tax, the insurance premium tax. That's no change from previous years. And what is a big change from previous years, the money from the American Rescue Plan Act, which we received $635,000 last June, and will receive another $635,000 this coming June. So that is a big change. The proposed expenditures, due to the ARPA money that we got, and we had surveys done of what people wanted us to do with the money, we're not allowed to save it. We must spend it. Certain amount of it goes to the parks, particularly the Little Hunting Creek Park and the Harrods Creek Bridge down in the Harrods Creek Park. There's an appropriation proposed for something that people particularly wanted, which is connectivity. There are 2 items in there: the sidewalks connecting our neighborhoods and the boardwalk that we are contemplating. It's in the early stages between Little Hunting Creek Park and across Putney Pond. Another item that's in here, which is unusual, usually we look at a salary increase of 1% or 1.5%, with the cost of living index currently at 8%, with the state having implemented an 8% raise across the board. This budget proposes a 7% increase for all Prospect employees. Those are the main points of the budget. When we get into considering having a first reading of it, we'll get into more detail, but that constitutes my budget message of the proposed budget. This was put together by me, by John Carter, by 3 members of the council. I asked a 4th to participate, but he declined. So that's how that happened. Next, I want to say that we have put out an invitation to bid on all the work to build the Little Hunting Creek Park, except for the playground. The playground was accepted out because we're not putting that out for bid. We're piggybacking on a state contract. So what we're putting out for bid includes the parking lot expansion, making our City Hall parking lot considerably bigger, regrading, sidewalk construction, and the pavilion. The bids are to be opened on April 28th. We cannot accept any bid until a budget for fiscal 2022-23 has been enacted, because most or all of that work will happen in 2022-2023. And I can't go forward with any of that until I have a budget to pay for it. So that's why that has to be implemented if we're going to go forward. Next, we are about to put out an invitation for bids for the repaving of the existing parking lot. It's too soon to know which fiscal year this will fall in, although I expect it will fall in the coming fiscal year, which starts July 1. From preliminary estimates Milestone has received, it appears the bids will be much higher than we expected. Next, I want to talk about our ongoing war with LDG. With regard to Prospect Cove, LDG has begun taking our depositions in that litigation. Personally, I will have a second day of deposition this coming Thursday. They're proposing to depose everyone who was on the council during the end of 2016 and all of 2017. Luke Schmidt's deposition is scheduled for May the 10th. We're working on getting dates from the others. They intend to take all those depositions in the next couple of months. With regard to the other proposed development by LDG, it's called the Viridian. It's up on the other side of the Marathon Station up along 42. There's an organization called the Friends of 42. And they had brought a lawsuit against LDG, against the Planning Commission, and against Metro. And they just won a decision of the circuit court. And that circuit court holding is, quote, the decision of the Planning Commission is vacated and held null and void. It's a pretty big deal. That decision had been a go-ahead for the Viridian. The court's rationale for that was that the Planning Commission had not paid attention to the rules of the plan called Cornerstone. LDG can now appeal from that decision, or they can go back to the Planning Commission and start over. That constitutes my opening remarks. Are there any questions about any of those things? Yes, sir. LDG is a company, it's a very big company. They build affordable housing. They're a one-trick pony. That's what they do. They have an enormous amount of money. They just recently was in the paper, bought the property where Brown Brothers Cadillac has been for years. They just bought that. They just bought the property where the Greyhound bus station has been for years. Just bought that. They bought another piece of property that cost more money than the first two combined downtown. I don't know what that property is. I read about it, but I don't know. So that's who they are. LDG, they're the initials of the three founding members or partners. I don't know what L is. I've heard it. D stands for Dischinger, Chris Dischinger, and G stands for Gross. That's who LDG is. They asked me all about that in my deposition too. So any other questions?
Much of their money comes from Metro honeypots for affordable housing. So they're very, very well connected with Metro.
That is my understanding also, and it's true. They have two trust funds for affordable housing that used to get $10 million each from Metro. I don't know where they're funded currently. But with all the ARPA money floating around, you can bet that they're well funded.
I think there was some ARPA money earmarked for that fund also, in addition to the 11 million that was the norm.
I think you're right. Any other questions or comments?
I have,
Dale.
John, excuse me.
Dale.
Since there is no detail like you handed out, I can only assume it's a zero-based budget because I don't see any comparison to the actual expenditure last year or the budget from last year. So did you just build this from ground zero and compare it up, because there's nothing to compare it to?
We didn't build it from ground zero. We rely pretty much on what has gone before, except for the unusual circumstances of this particular year. I think what you have in your hand, that's the budget ordinance. What's
It's not, I asked for the budget.
what you're looking for, Dale, I believe, is the so-called workbook. And while what you have in your hand is about a page and a half. And if the ordinance, whatever ordinance passes, that's what will control what the administration can spend for what. The workbook is broken down much finer in much more detail. And that's what we use to keep track. Let me give an example. This goes back a year or so ago. There was an item in the budget ordinance that said simply professional services, okay? When you looked at the workbook, you would find that there were 10 listed professional services and a total of all of them. That's what went into the ordinance.
That's
If you
the
wanted
way
to
you built this.
And yeah, if you wanted to see what was in for legal expenses or for accounting or for engineering, you'd have to look in the workbook. What controls what the administration spends money for is what you got in your line. It's based on
What I have here, 7% seems awfully high for a raise for a civic organization. The companies that I'm familiar with are giving 3 to 5%. Why in the world would a civic organizations at the 7% increase? And the other is the thing that I've been harping on forever is that we're continuing to expand our parks, and now the park maintenance is almost $800,000, and trying to put another park in to see a ridiculous number. Both of those seem ridiculous.
Understand. Anything else?
John,
Yeah.
question on the depositions.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a formal, or is there a formal notice that we're being deposed, or have you gotten it?
There will be a formal notice once there is a, Grover is trying to work with each individual who is to be deposed, find out what dates would work for them. And once that is settled, then there will be a formal notice coming out.
To appear on that date?
Yeah. But it's a two-step process.
Will we have access to, for instance, your deposition, the questions that are asked?
It's a timing issue. It depends. If your deposition was tomorrow, the answer would be no, because mine's not done yet. If it was next week, the answer would probably be no, because they wouldn't have printed it yet. But if your deposition's a month away, I would say the answer is yes. You would get to read my deposition, and see what they asked me. What we can do right now, if you wish, we can make available a copy of Scott Reed's deposition, which was taken several months ago, and I may even have that in my office.
Okay, well, I'd appreciate a copy of that. I'm
Yeah.
just curious what
Oh, sure.
level of
Yeah,
inquiry
I was too.
they're pursuing.
How long was,
They're not going to take yours.
No, I mean, I'd like to have a copy.
I mean, they don't care what you think.
I just care what you said. I just want a copy of it, please, too.
the,
can have
how
mine
long,
forever.
why is yours in two things? How long did it go?
Sorry?
Why is your deposition in two stages? How long was the first stage?
From 10 in the morning with about 30 minutes out for somebody to eat something during the one meeting. Went until, what time, 5, 6?
At 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, 10 to 5. And he had the stack of documents, and I'm just gonna say this on the record, okay? It's really stupid.
That's what it sounds like.
Very
Yes.
Because for one thing, their complaint in this litigation has 3 parts. And we are involved in only one part.
And it's a very small part of it too.
And it was the allegation that they made that the Metro Council acted arbitrarily with no evidence, with insufficient evidence. And we have already won that in the circuit court. I mean, that's been decided.
Mhm.
The remaining 2 parts, that Metro Council by its vote violated the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, and also that it violated the Fair Housing Act we're not involved in that. Why they want my deposition or yours is a really good question. And having been deposed, having read Scott Reed's deposition, I don't see where they're going with this. I've got an opinion why they're doing it, but I don't know what to say.
What's
Well,
fees?
besides your
What's
opinion,
fees?
You said it.
Yeah.
but the other portion of it could be that they're getting ready to do the new plan and take it through the steps that they went through before. And if we say anything untoward or stupid, they'll use that against the new plan. Getting
The
not
new
passed.
plan is almost identical to the old plan.
Agreed,
Looked at it.
agreed. Do we have a clue when the new plan is liable to be heard?
I don't have a clue. I haven't heard. As soon as I do, it'll go out.
John, where were you deposed? Downtown?
Yes, sir.
It,
25th floor, what used to be Kentucky Trust is now PNC, you know,
Yeah.
right there at Fifth, between Market and Main and Fifth Street.
okay,
Yeah.
it's downtown. We have to go downtown.
What's that?
We have to go downtown. We get paid for it.
I'm not paying. Yeah,
Okay,
part of the job.
yeah, yeah.
All right, well, Frank and Sandra are gonna get deposed, hopefully, and Luke Schmidt and Stuart Miles and Susan Nicholson and Sandy Tucci, bless her. And who was that other, Jeff Stovall? They're all in here. If they can find it.
If they can find it.
All right, commission and board reports, report of the forestation board, I don't see anyone here tonight.
Lee.
He's WebExing.
He's up there.
Oh, there's Lee, okay.
Yes, I can give the forest station report. Last Friday, we got 13 trees planted. 7 of these were city trees along Sutherland Farm Road, and 6 trees were the canopy trees. They all look great as planted, and one of the canopy tree customers has come back and said they want to order another one when we hope to do this in the fall. So that went very well. It had been delayed because of rain on and off and a faulty rain forecast, but anyhow, it's done. They look good. Another positive, we got donations for $800 for 2 Wardell family memorial trees and a commemorative plaque recognizing Harry Hardin's contributions. And those will go in the fall. And for Harry Hardin, the thought is we'll take one of our city trees in a suitable location and then use the money, which was $100, for the plaque that would go with that to recognize Harry's many contributions. We have things going on in code enforcement. There's always some delays by property owners who don't want to have the expense of remediating trees. We did vote at the April 12th meeting of the board to fund a developer in the breakers $500 if a hazardous tree is not removed within 10 days of receipt of a follow-up letter from a code enforcement. That issue has been going since January, when the property owner in Innisbrook brought this matter to our attention. And we put in our budget request with emphasis on the continued planning and maintenance of trees and expanding the canopy tree program. And Linda Knox and Connie Kuhn have prepared a article on the city's planning program that will likely go out in the next city newsletter. And we submitted to the mayor and city clerk the updated city plan, which is required in April. And I think the council will get a chance to vote on it in May. Basically, this is updated goals and a list of what was accomplished in the past year. Any questions?
Any questions for Lee? All right, thank you, Lee.
You bet.
Let's see. Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, anyone else?
Thank you. It's good to be back here in person for the first time in a couple of years. The council has my written report, but I'd like to just go over a couple of highlights for those in attendance and also people that might be watching online. We had our first of 2 spring wildflower walks on Sunday, April 10th. We had a small but enthusiastic group that went through. In some respects, it was good that our numbers were a little bit smaller because everyone was able to hear our guide and learn a lot about the flowers and see exactly what she was pointing to. Our guide is Jacqueline McGrail, who for several years has led these wildflower walks. She's extremely knowledgeable about flowers in our area and does just a great job. There's one more opportunity if you missed the first one. On Sunday, April 24th, this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. at the Montero Drive trailhead of Harrods Creek Park. For those that might find it difficult to hike down that first hill, there's an alternate meeting location in the parking lot. We encourage people to park on Montero if they can because the parking lot is fairly small and might get filled up. As the wildflower season progresses, different flowers are in bloom at different times. So even if you attended the first walk, the second walk might still be very informative and lovely. In other things, we've completed the budgeted invasive removal program for the current fiscal year. If we have some funds remaining, we may be able to schedule a couple more days, but we've got the work done that was originally budgeted. We have also accepted a bid to replace 2 footbridges on the Blue Trail of Harrods Creek Park. If you hike the Blue Trail, you'll see that a couple of these footbridges are getting a little bit undermined. We're going to replace them with more substantial bridges that have handrails. And when I mentioned that on our wildflower walk, some of the participants were really happy that we were going to put bridges with handrails in. So that's good. We expect that work to be completed this fiscal year if it ever stops raining. Plans continue for the 2 eco projects that have been identified in our parks. One is in Harrods Creek Park, the other is in Putney Pond and Woodlands. We expect to have those projects done this late spring or during the summer. And we will be scheduling some volunteer dates to do sort of minor trail repairs, maintenance, and also to remove some invasive garlic mustard. That's something that volunteers can do. Some of the other work that we've paid for is a little more extensive and requires a little more professional help. The final thing I wanted to mention was not in my written report to council, but we are exploring the possibility of building a boardwalk across Putney Pond that would connect the landings with City Hall. And that land is under a conservation easement because the property was partially purchased with funds from the Kentucky Heritage Land Conservation Fund. And any work we do on that property, we need to have approval from that organization. So we will be going to them in May for their July meeting, asking that they approve the concept of a boardwalk. If they will approve the concept, then we'll be moving forward to try to get design work done and find out what it will actually cost and sort of move forward with that. We will be meeting with Lee Droppelman of ICF next month. That name, or next week, that name may be familiar to people. He did the report on options for Putney Pond that was commissioned, I think it was 2021. And so he's very familiar with the area, very familiar with the pond. And we thought he would be the first person to talk to get his sense of what it would take to design, what kind of permitting might be required, and the best way to move forward. And then Don has reached out to a couple of construction companies just to get ballpark ideas on what it would cost to build such a structure. So we're just in the exploration stages, but we're moving forward with that.
Where would it, I realize you don't have an answer to
Yes.
this, but roughly, where would it start and where would it stop?
The begin, well, whichever direction you think about, it would start around the parking circle off on Putney Lane, and it would end up behind City Hall.
So
And
we're talking a long.
It's
It's
quite
about
a long.
800 feet.
Yeah.
How far, sorry.
It's about 800 lineal feet, and it's about 6 foot wide. It's the concept.
So there's a lot of unknowns right now, but we're moving forward. And part of the reasoning for doing this project is that not everyone can hike the trails. I mean, you can get from the landings to City Hall if you hike through the woodland trails. That doesn't really work very well for people that might have some mobility issues, or people that want to bring their kid in a stroller. So we're looking for ways that will allow people to access the park, view the wildlife, be able to connect with City Hall, for City Hall business, to use the library, to use Little Hunting Creek Park. So we think it would be a great addition if we're able to make all the pieces fit together and come up with a good way to make it work. Anything else?
Linda, is all of that land in the floodplain?
I don't know how to answer that question. I know that the pond level does go up and down, and we have had instances where,
I don't know, but I think it is. I think it's in.
and
Concept is it would be built above that.
Right.
Yeah,
It would be-
elevated.
It would be up sufficiently.
yeah, because we really need to, because the level of the pond does go up and down with heavy rain events, that needs to be part of the design consideration.
I think where all of you all are sitting is in a floodplain as well. Just FYI. Just FYI.
You're probably right.
Well, in addition to the advantages that Linda just described, it also serves as a pedestrian connection between the landings and the condominiums on this side in Fox Harbor and beyond. So it's a good pedestrian connection.
Right. Thank you.
All right. One more committee report, and I call on Sandra Leonard for any library report.
The next used book sale is Friday, the 13th and the 14th. And this time, the proceeds of the book sale will go to our new digital program. We are now slowly making available to all of the people that have library cards, visual and audio books that can be downloaded to almost anything, a Kindle, a cell phone, a computer, an iPad. And this is part of a Kentucky consortium, which gives us access to over 120,000 books. We looked into something like this years ago and it was much more expensive, but obviously, like a lot of other things, it's come down in price. John Carter came up to our last volunteer meeting and we did a run through with all of the volunteers to see, and they had all different kinds of things they were downloading on. And we have all different talents and skills as volunteers, and I thought it was really successful. So far, I've only gotten 2 follow-up questions, which is amazing if you think about it. So we are slowly rolling it out. What we will end up doing is we will be writing up in an easy fashion the steps to go download it. And we'll do that for an e-blast. We'll do it as handouts that people can have. And we're available to work, and that's why we started with the volunteers. We're available to work with individuals if they'd like us to. And we're going to start doing that at the book sale in May. Anyway, that's what the library's doing.
Any questions for Sandra? Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for asking that. That's what I was doing before I came down here. And the last book sale we had was in lieu of 3. And so it was enormous. This one's normal. And so we really would like your donations. By the 13th of May, but sooner than that if possible, because we sort them onto the tables. And you can bring them in anytime City Hall's open. Thank you.
How much is in the budget for the library?
How much is total in the budget? Between our contract to lease books, which we do lease the bulk, we don't buy books, it's cheaper to lease them. So between our contract to lease books, our contract for our inventory, which we have to keep, and what I just talked about, next year's total budget would be $15,000. Yes, sir.
Compared to $779,000.
No, the library is not expensive. Yes, sir.
What's the status of the history of library?
I have, and because of COVID, I haven't done anything serious for the last couple of years. Longer than I ever wanted it to. Good question. I can't come up with that. How much money? Less than $1,000 probably. Less than $1,000 over all those years. Again, it's all been done by volunteers. And we have paid for printing costs at the Pilsen Society. You know, nothing of significance has been paid on it at all. No, because volunteers are very difficult to project.
Jeff, you got a police report for us?
Sure, I'll be brief because I know you've got a lot to do. House checks were really high again, almost 4,100. That's near record levels. They continue to be high. I think the last week of March may have been part of spring break. So that's always one of our highest months. Nothing else statistically really stood out. One arrest actually was the same person. It was a series of warrants, one of which was PFO1, which is pretty significant. That's persistent felon offender. That was a result of a traffic stop. The reports of any significance, the one involving internet fraud, that was someone filed unemployment benefits on behalf of the victim who didn't file a complaint. That was a Prospect resident. One of the thefts involved theft from a homeowner, from a domestic employee that worked for him. They just basically fired him. They didn't want to prosecute him. That involved $1,000. The one listed as road rage is a little bit ironic because the person that was involved in the case didn't want to file a report, but a third party wanted to, just to let us know that it happened. Basically, the guy gets angry with somebody that cut him off in traffic. They exchange words, and then one person just basically pulls up a gun, doesn't point it to anybody, but just shows him that he has a gun, and then they drive off. And one guy tells some lady about it. She called the police. The guy that was involved in it wasn't concerned about it. Code enforcement reports, 17 permits were issued. Several of those involved new homes under construction in the breakers, and then Hunter's Green. And Rick Wilson reviews all of those plans. And he does a really good job of doing that. And if there's any glitches at all with it, he works very well with the builders to get those issues resolved. For example, they may come in with a plan that has a garage going to the wrong side of the property. He clears that up before anybody breaks ground and points out where we have issues. He does a really good job of that. There's been a few more that they've broken ground up in Hunter's Green there in Hunting Creek. The 2 felony reports that are listed, both of those involved events that occurred a long time ago, but they just now, the victim became aware. One was over 2 years old, where let's see, someone purchased $1,600 in products from AT&T. And it wasn't until a collection agency came and notified the victim, said, you owe us $1,600. And it's just like, what are you talking about? They found out that in their name, someone opened up an account and bought a bunch of stuff. Found out about 2 years later. That's how they became aware. And then the other one was just someone opened up an account in someone's name. They actually got information off the business account, opened up an account, personal account, and then stole $2,800. So they basically, we have to file those on behalf of the bank so they can recover all the money back.
Jeff, what happens when the collection people come around my front door for something I didn't order 2 years ago? What happens?
Just file a police report with us, and then they can notify them that it's fraud, that it was a fraudulent purchase, and they can show that, and then the collection agency basically kicks rocks. So they can't recover from you. At least you're taking the responsibility for you.
So it doesn't hurt my credit rating.
Because there'll be a report on there that it clears it, that it was a criminal act naming you, and then they get to clear it. That's it. Somebody has any questions?
Any questions to our chief? Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Unfinished business. Second reading of ordinance 615, series 2022. An ordinance amending Title III of the Prospect Kentucky Code of Ordinances regarding compensation for council members in the city of Prospect. Is there a motion to adopt that ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
Yes, I would like to, I'm not interested in changing the body, but however, the 2 whereases that I think are inappropriate in this situation is, whereas the current compensation of $100, I think that should be struck. The current compensation does not cover the cost of basic expenses. Actually, it doesn't cost it doesn't cover the cost of the council members' time. There are provisions for expenses at some point. And the other one, which I think is more important, is whereas we ought to work to attract talent in the future to serve the city as council members. I just don't think that that's the right message. If someone looks at this as a money-making proposition, I think it's the wrong person. So I would like to strike those 2 whereases, as the whereases are not substantive, if I'm correct, Chris.
That's correct. You don't need any whereas actually, but
I'd like to, for the record, I'd like to strike those 2. And then I guess we can proceed if we can do that.
Any other discussion?
Actually, I would agree that I don't think that I don't think we should try to attract people to elected office with recompense when the office itself doesn't bring any with it. I think that if somebody was going to go on city council because we were going to give them $250 a month, that isn't a person I'm going to vote for. I think that that is a major problem. In regard to basic expenses, while there may be provisions, I've been on the council for a very long time. It costs me somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 every year to be on the council. I've kept my records. And I just don't see where this is an imperative. I think this is, given what everybody has gone through with COVID, given inflation and everything else, given the fact that this is not an amount that really does anything, I personally think it's the wrong time for us to have it on the agenda.
This is my idea, so I'd like to, for the benefit of the public and for the benefit of the folks who are here. So let me just talk about why I've done this. None of us are in this to make money. Our current compensation is 100. We're going to strike that, but that's what it is per month. But around January, I just looked at what my expenses are, and just to, not to bore you, but you know, trips to Simpsonville to look at their lighting when we were looking at the US 42 safety plan. They also included trips to Clarksville, J-Town, Oldham County. I've been out to the Oldham County PVA several times, looking at what might happen as far as projected developments that would affect the transportation on US 42. Trips to KLC, Lexington, trip to Carmel, Indiana, to look at their roundabouts and how their city is managed, and many, many others. I then did a survey, so I won't mention the cities, but the other cities that are kind of similar to us, compensation values are $150 a month, $400 a month, $500 a month, and they're going to $600 a month this month. And then, of course, Jefferson County is way, way up there, and that's not really in our comparison. But in talking to the bursar for the Jefferson County Metro, and I explained to him what I was thinking about doing, he said, Greg, I don't know of anybody, any other city that's that low. So again, I'm not trying to make money, but I'm just trying to offset the costs. What I spend each month for ink and paper is pretty much $100 a month. So I'm just trying to keep up with that. So that's the reason for this. I'm open for discussion.
I understand there are a fair number of small cities. There are 80 suburban cities in Jefferson County, and I understand that the great bulk of them do not get anything.
If I could add on, I wanted to say thanks to Greg for putting this together. I don't think the amount, I think, is actually kind of low, but I support you fully in it, Greg. But I did want to say thank you, because you put in a lot of work in doing a survey of all of the city's benefits relative to other cities' compensation, and that's from across the board, number of employees, all the different things that they have encompass, who contracts out what. I mean, it was a multi-page document, and have written up reports on it. And one thing that there were several things that I noted, but one thing was that the council is compensated at a almost nothing rate. I remember when I heard there was $100, my actual thought was, I don't really want to fill out the paperwork to even get the money. I'd rather you not give it to me, because it's so piddly. So I commend you for moving forward. While I think it could be more, I think Prospect sometimes has a problem with perfection and inability to move forward and make progress when something isn't perfect, but it's a great solution. So I think 250 is a great move in the right direction. And I would hate we're very good at putting things off in perpetuity. And so I did just want to say thank you. And I think 250 is great. And my thoughts overall is, you know, I do a lot of printing at home. So it's an unseen cost to me until I go buy ink and paper and whatnot, which is monstrously more expensive than it was 2 years ago. But I do between 12 and 17 meetings a month at the city. And I will say I'm on the high end. I know, you know, some people do the one a month, but between 12 and 17. So I put in, those meetings are probably anywhere between 45 minutes for the smallest one up to 3 hours for a good portion of them. So, and I do it because I have a passion to help people and to help the city succeed. But yeah, I mean, $100 I think is kind of offensive because I'm not sure why you'd give it to me. But $250 again, I think is good to at least cover some portion of my time. It probably doesn't cover my gas to go to any of those things. But so, anyways, those are my thoughts. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, I'm going to ask for a vote. Sandra, how do you vote?
No,
Don Gibson,
Yes.
Doug Farnsley,
Yes.
Greg Hulsman,
Yes.
Frank Fulcher,
Present.
and Sarah Odell.
Yes.
Okay, as I counted, there are 4 yes, 1 present, 1 no. So the ordinance passes. Congratulations, Greg. Next on the agenda, actually,
John, I'd like to introduce my ordinance at this point as we're dealing, or I need my resolution.
resolution. You go right ahead.
I'm introducing ordinance number,
Resolution.
resolution. Gotta find it. Resolution 4, series. I'll preface this by saying that that the people's business needs to be conducted in public. And in that context, I constructed this resolution and read it. Whereas informed decisions.
Hey, Frank, I'm super sorry. Was that in the packet? I apologize for that.
No, I'm reading it, Sarah.
No, we received
Okay.
it just when the meeting started. Is when we received it.
Can we are we allowed to do that if it's not on the agenda? I just want to make sure. I apologize that I'm not there to have it, but if it's not on the agenda.
It's
In a
new.
regular meeting, yes.
Yes.
Sorry,
Good
can you all
proceed.
say everybody was talking at once?
What if it's not on the agenda?
We can add to the agenda. It's our meeting.
We've just shut a bunch of other stuff down in previous meetings.
I
when
think the
it's been
problem
raised.
is you didn't comply with open records, Frank, or open meetings. You didn't give notice to the public that you're going to. You're catching me cold on it, but that's my initial thought, that you've got a problem in regards to, you talk about openness. Well, you didn't give any notice to anybody that you're going to bring this up.
Well, I didn't realize until I got into the budget detail that we didn't have sufficient information, and that the budget message was not given to us. Now, John said there were three people on the council that put the budget together, but that means there are three that weren't, and we're supposed to be doing that in public.
Well, 2 things. One is we distributed everything last Wednesday. And the other is that this is not up for a vote tonight. This is not up for a vote. If it gets a first reading tonight, it's not up for a vote for another month. So there's all kinds of time for people to look into it and talk about it.
okay, but I looked into it a little bit also. And there is a state statute and there is also a prospect ordinance that requires with the budget that we be given a budget message. And it's very clear as to what needs to be in that budget message. And as I was looking at budget and trying to figure out what was going on, I realized there's no way I can do that from looking at just numbers on paper, because what's missing is the dialogue that goes with the numbers that says, in essence, some of the questions you asked, Mr. Dodrell, What is the difference from last year? Why is there a difference from last year? And as a result, I don't think we can go forward tonight with a first reading on a budget when at least half of the city council has absolutely no idea what is in the budget, because we do not have, as the statute and the ordinance require, we do not have a budget message.
May I be recognized, Mr. Mayor? Actually, the provision for a budget message and the budget is when the budget's going to be adopted. All we have tonight is a first reading. And it's ironic that you say you had no idea. You've had this budget workbook since Wednesday of last week. If you've had questions, the mayor's available, I'm available, John Clark's available to answer any questions that you might have. So
You
it's,
can't
may I finish?
Go ahead.
So I think there's some onus on members of the council to do their due diligence rather than show up at the last minute and say, oh, I didn't have notice. I don't have answers to my questions. We didn't ask any questions.
You can't ask a question when you don't know what to ask the question about.
Mayor, may I say something? Yeah, sorry, thank you. So, just to add on for, what Doug had mentioned and kind of to address, Sandra, for people who are listening, but I was actually on vacation for a lot of, the budget items. So I received the book on Wednesday I received the book with the same information that you had when you opened it. And that's actually how the other council member was invited to be able to participate, because once you go above 4, they need to be open meetings. So I was not part of that. And I opened it up Wednesday, did a cursory read, called John Carter for one quick question. And then I think Thursday morning, it might have been Friday morning, John Carter, you can correct me, but did a long walkthrough, compared it with the previous budget, each line item. It maybe took me an hour and a half to go through line item by line item. And then I sent him an 18-question email that I did. Hey, here's this line, here's this item, details, please. Here's this line, here's this item, why increase? Here's this line, here's this item, why so much money? What's it for? And to John Carter, I have to tell you, the guy in 50 minutes typed me a exceptionally long email responding to full 18 questions that were multi-layered. Had it 50 minutes later, and I opened it up, and at that point I was too busy actually to sit and read it, so I read it after that. But the guy hustled. I even told him it wasn't a rush. So I was where you were at, but I just asked the questions with, I think there may be some intent to delay the actions of the budget. But I think there was an ability to ask questions and find out, because I was able to do it, and I don't find myself a particular special individual.
Sir, we're supposed to be presented with a budget from the executive, and the question should be answered in a public forum. We should each, if there are questions of any significance, they should be presented in public. An explanation of where the $200,000 in sidewalks, what's that all about?
Oh,
Where
yeah,
are
no, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, no, and I apologize. That was not my point to cut you off there. So if you had more to say, I apologize. Yeah, no, and Frank, those were my, and I had those questions. And I mean, we are allowed to ask questions on the side, but I guess, I was going to ask them sort of already knowing the answer, but kind of, because I do think it's imperative to let people who are listening know the information going on, but we haven't gotten to the budget yet to go over it. So I hear you on that. But yeah.
Well, to your point that in the delaying the budget is an objective, that's foolish, because we don't want to sit up here for three more meetings for 3 hours debating minutia when it could be handled in accordance with the statutes.
This is a first reading. It's probably a pretty good time to ask the questions that you're asking. And then we'll address adopting the budget or not adopting it assuming we get a first reading tonight at our next meeting.
But then Doug, that could be pointless because if there's substantive changes, which I suspect there would be, then we've got to go back to a first reading.
Well,
Which is, I mean, that's part of
legislation.
legislation though, you know?
Well, the statute also clearly says the budget proposal together with a budget message shall be submitted to the legislative body. It doesn't say, get the budget and then a month later or whenever, get the budget message, because at least I cannot analyze the budget comprehensively without some of the things that are contained by law in the budget message.
And to
Does
that,
it say anywhere it has to be printed and handed out? Because I'm fairly certain the mayor has submitted a budget
It
message.
says the budget proposal together with a budget message. And then it's very specific as what needs to be in the budget message.
But it also says that that's 30 days before the beginning of the new fiscal year.
Right.
And we're several months in advance. of that.
Exactly.
But
And
it
that's
is- but
why I agree with him. The purpose of this is not to delay. It's to have an informed decision-making process.
and the fact, what John said in the mayor's speech is that 3 council members got together with the mayor and put this together, presumes that the other 3 knew what was going on.
No, it doesn't presume any such thing. What I am talking about is not unusual. In fact, over the years, that's exactly the way that a proposed budget has been put together. You can't have more than 3 council members to participate because otherwise you're having a public meeting.
So we don't have anything on the floor to discuss right now. I'll move the first reading of the budget ordinance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I'm not going to vote.
Me either.
I'm leaving.
Sorry.
Number 1.
That's. Guess balance is built special meeting.
Yeah. Do we need to explain what that does to this meeting, the departure of those council members?
Since 3 members of the council have left, we don't have a quorum, and the meeting, I declare adjourned.
I think there
Yes,
is.
someone here to sign up to speak.
Well, there's nobody from this.
We don't have a meeting.
Yeah, you can't have a meeting. Will you let me know when the live stream's done? Well, just because I have a question, since we can't carry on business right now, I don't want to violate. Ron, do you hear that?
Yes, give me just a second.
No worries, thanks. I don't want to violate any meeting laws.
That's gonna backfire.
Live stream is dead.